All right, well, some people would say that was bad enough, but Democrats are taking a page out of Obama's apology tour playbook, traveling overseas to criticize America and whine to Europeans about how ashamed they are of their own country. Watch.
Well, I bring you greetings from the friends of Spain, the friends of Europe. I want to bring you greetings as well from a nation that is in crisis. I'm not going to sugarcoat the gravity of what we face right now in the United States. This is the most significant threat to American democracy since the Civil War. Donald Trump in our country is trying to end our democracy. We are not on the verge of a totalitarian takeover. We are in the middle of it. He is trying to seize control of our courts, of our law enforcement, of our media, of our elections. His goal is oligarchic capture. He doesn't believe in democratic equality. He doesn't believe in shared prosperity. He's invaded American cities with his personal political police force, ICE, to crush peaceful protest.
We've got a feeble-minded, trigger-happy president who plunged us into a war where no threat was present, with no clear objectives and no exit plan. We need to call that what it is. That's fascism. It's an epidemic of distrust in government right now, in America and all over the world. You're not too thrilled with America right now. I get it. I'll let you in on this. There's a whole lot of Americans who aren't too thrilled with ourselves either right now.
Wow. Going overseas to say that stuff. Of course, on the one side, the Democrats are pushing the wild charge that America is being ruled by a totalitarian fascist regime, while also saying that that regime could lose democratically held elections in November. Watch.
His party loses election after election, and his enablers in Congress are going to be wiped out of office this November in our elections. Our project as progressives is not simply to win elections.
Republicans are losing local and state elections around the country. There is a reasonably good chance that the Republicans will lose control over the House of Representatives in the November election and maybe even the Senate.
It's a threat that we're going to have to contend with, not just in this election, but for years to come.
Let's welcome Larry Elder's show host, Larry Elder. Larry, not only are we at war with a regime that's been killing and kidnapping Americans for 47 years while shouting death to America, our commander-in-chief, who's finally taking action against the threat, is attacked by U.S. senators and others overseas. I mean, this is, and it's not only way beyond the pale in terms of patriotism, but also what they're saying doesn't make any sense.
No, it sure doesn't. And the problem is we're at war with the American left. In the last 4 years under the Biden administration, David, 15 million illegal aliens came to this dreaded, hateful country from virtually every country in the world. If we're so bad, why does so much of the world want to live here? After the World War II, until 1949, we were in sole possession of the mightiest weapon mankind ever saw. What did we do with it? Did we oppress the world? Did we bomb people into submission? We did absolutely nothing with it. Can you imagine if Iran was the sole possessor of a nuclear bomb, or China or Russia? And we're the only majority white country in the world to ever elect a black president. How bad can we be?
Unbelievable. And Senator Bernie Sanders went so far as to thank Spain for not honoring Spain's commitment to NATO and refusing to help our military. Listen.
Thank Prime Minister Sanchez and all of you who have spoken out and taken action against the illegal and dangerous wars being waged by Netanyahu and Trump in Iran and Lebanon. I fear very much that leaders like Trump, Netanyahu, and Putin in Ukraine are plunging this world into international anarchy.
So, Larry, he's thanking a corrupt Spanish socialist who went out of his way to prevent our troops from using bases that we pay for. I mean, I've never heard anything like that.
Well, it froze up a little bit, David. I hope you can hear me. But even the Secretary General of NATO is applauding President Trump on doing something finally about Iran. And he also chastised NATO countries for not stepping up and doing their part. So he also celebrated Donald Trump for forcing our NATO allies to spend 5% of their GDP on defense when they weren't even doing 2%. And Presidents Barack Obama and George W. Bush complained about it, did nothing about it. Trump did. And Secretary Mark Rutte actually praised Donald Trump. So we're more liked by him than we are by many of these Democrats in Washington, D.C.
I just have to say that it's not completely 100% that way, that there are a couple of Democrats, of course, Senator Fetterman is one. There's another Democrat, Julian Epstein, who criticizes fellow Democrats, and he wrote in the New York Post, I think we can put it up, quote, Democrats need Trump to fail in Iran because if he succeeds, Democrats are exposed as unserious people with an unserious worldview and no coherent plan on national security. So there are a precious few, Larry, who are giving credit where it's due.
Yeah, again, I hope you can hear me. David Boies, a big prominent Democrat lawyer, wrote an op-ed piece, and he said, look, I don't like Trump. You don't like Trump. I understand that. But for crying out loud, we have an enemy, and the enemy is Iran, and he's doing something about it, and we need to at least support him on this mission. We can dislike him later on after the mission is done, but for now, let's us Democrats support what President Trump is doing.
Yes, exactly. So there are some, but unfortunately, that the party has a serious problem there. Larry Elder, great to see you. Thank you very much for coming. Coming up,